How's it going, everybody? I'm Drifty from Driftwood Gaming. Thanks for joining me and welcome back to the Let's Make a Game series for 2018, where we play Natural Explorers, a sim RPG using the RPG Maker MV engine. Over the weekend, quite a lot has happened. I've made several changes to the project. Many comments have been made and the idea comments have been updated. Scrollies, you can see some of the updates if you're interested in pausing the video. I'll mention a few of the new people who have chimed in. Karyn IT recommended that we have timers on buildings so that they decay over time. We may have to refresh the timers or something. I'm not sure if we're going to do anything like that, but that's an interesting idea. Demos Overkill suggested in the last episode that we change the resolution, and I did that, but I kept going with it, and I looked on the RPG Maker web forums for what people recommend for the best resolution, and I tried several resolutions, and I'm going to settle on 1104 by 624. This is to increase the likelihood that the game runs smooth with a lot of parallel processes running. Also, I kind of like the zoomed in look, and it matches the 48 by 48 tile set scheme. So that's the new game's resolution. That being as such, I had to remake a few things and change a few things. You may have noticed by now that we have a new background piece of art. This is water painting by JAP, which I added a few filters to and then threw some text and my logo on it. This is a public domain picture I modified for the use of this project. With the resolution change, I had to change the meat bar placement, which I have the method down here. Now it starts at 21 by 363. I moved the meat bar placement, added some new things to the project, added some new resources to the project that may or may not be used. I put most of them in the maybe used folder inside the IMG of the games directory. Demos Overkill also recommended that we create a day-night cycle using Terrax lighting, and I've used Terrax lighting in other projects as well. It's a fantastic plugin. We'll probably add some lighting, some weather systems, which was recommended by Devin Scott. Devin Scott also mentioned, I forgot to add, Devin Scott asked to be an NPC in the game, which I have made him an NPC in the game. If you would like to be an NPC in the game, just make a request that you would like to be an NPC in the game, and I'll try to find a spot where you can fit in the game as a wandering town NPC, or maybe a random encounter NPC, or maybe an enemy, maybe a boss fight, maybe whatever your thoughts are. If you want to be included in the game, you could just mention as such. However, if you are more picky and you want your character art to look like a certain character art, you can send me character art as long as it's free to use, or I'm just going to make a random generated one and throw you in there that way. Alright, so thank you so much for the comments, everybody. If you have a comment on a future episode, please leave them in the comments below. Get our text pads out of the way here. So let's take a look at the game as it sits now. We got this new title screen, which I like. Hopefully you guys like it. I've updated Yanfly's event mini labels. As you can probably notice, they allow for text codes in them. If you put them in there, if you have the message core, they will allow that. So you can see now that we have the event mini label letting us know what we can get from each event. I've updated the quarry to also require a pickaxe, but I've also made it more like the mine in that it has 3 things that you can get. The salt, you can get stone, salt, or granite. Most of the time you're going to get stone, so I'm going to replace the way that they're listed. Salt is like 20% of the time, stone is like 3 out of 4, and then granite is like rolling a 20 on a d20, so 5% of the time you'll get granite, and granite is your high quality stone, so it's like getting a diamond basically. I've updated the initialization event to also starts with 10k as I've added several new things. I'm going to activate all these events. Also started the party with 50 food rations. This will be changed. I have some things in here that I've just placed on the map. You know, there's nothing here yet, but this is where I'm going to have the lumber mill. So this is going to be like the lumber mill. I don't have any really good art for it. I just used what I had. Also, there's a tent here. I'm going to use this as something. I don't know what exactly what I'm going to do with this, but this is going to be something. The graveyard still has no functionality. We're going to do something with it. Probably do something with like a watchtower over here. Maybe do like a harbor, or maybe another secondary town that you'd have to upgrade, and once you have the town upgraded enough, it'll let you build a boat here. Walk in town, I've updated the town map a little bit. It's still not the way I want it to be. It's not amazing, but it doesn't look as bare and plain as it did. This is our Devin Scott NPC. He's mentioned something about adding another continent, so I've used his comments as what he says. I've added Yanfly's region restrictions up to this spot so that NPCs can't actually get up here, because if they do, they can get stuck when we activate these 2 events. I'm going to make these bars require some other resources to get started, but right now they don't. So you can go up to these things and hire a sushi chef. I've changed the town menu. I've had to make an event that was much higher so that these event mini labels didn't overlap each other. In the past episode, I mentioned I was going to do a lot of things with Yanfly's common event menu, and I am, but I haven't done much with adding other things to it it yet. I also removed functionality from it because you may notice by now that I'm in town and my stuff, all of my timers are still going because I changed the way that things work. I was having problems figuring out why the player would ever want to go into the town because it pauses all their other timers. They can't harvest anything while they're in town, but their hunger bar is still going down. I've just removed that idea. Now, even if you're in town, every mine, every farm, every timer is still going on. The only thing that's stopping is the animation and the icon, the balloon icon pop-up in animation on event number 7 or 12 or whatever it was. Otherwise, it would cause a problem. So I just did a conditional branch checking the players if the player was on the right map ID, and if not, then just skip the show balloon icon and the show animation. That lets me, using the player tracker parallel process event, that lets me keep track of where the player's at. So if they're on a different map, don't play the animations for the other map, which has turned out to work very, very nice. I've just updated the maps a little bit so they look a little better. This is going to be the player's house. It hasn't been created yet. Well, the outside has, but the inside hasn't been created yet. I had some good feedback about what I could do with the player housing, and the player housing could increase the player's stats. So if we go to status, we see that we have strength, endurance, intelligence, reputation, speed, and charisma. Well, these stats are not in use yet, but I do plan to put a very basic battle system, like not a super grindy battle system, but incentivize the player to upgrade their house. They can get extra things in their house, but one of the things that they can get are like plaques and banners and trophies that would increase their strength, or add another room to their house, like a library wing that would increase their intelligence. Someone made that comment. I like that idea. So upgrading your house will apply different stats, or maybe give the player special skills. Upgrading the player's house is going to help him in combat. Also, speaking of combat, I've added 2 new events over here. These have their own timers. This is an apple tree, and this is an orange tree, or citrus tree. For 1,000 coins, you can harvest a ripe orange every 3 minutes, and for another 1,000 coins, you can harvest a fresh apple every 3 minutes. And these are a couple of items that will restore HP and MP, not a lot on their own, because this is like, now once you've bought the apple tree and the citrus tree, you're going to be getting apples and citrus every 3 minutes. Of course, right now I have it set to every 18 seconds just for the debug. As we get these items, they restore MP and HP and MP for when the player goes into battle. What I plan to do for the battle system will be like endless dungeon type thing, some sort of endless dungeon where the player can take on challenges. Here will be a dungeon that the player can enter, maybe do some procedural generation for the dungeons, or maybe have a large list of maps the player can randomly roll into, so it's not fully procedurally generated, but a random map that could happen. Let's not starve. I'm gonna press E. I've added some more sound effects to the game. I've added a burping sound effect because no game would be complete without a burping sound effect. I plan to add functionality that will let the player toggle some of, if not all of, the custom sound effects. So if they don't want to hear the burping sound effects, they can be toggled out. It'd be really easy to add something like that. Just tie it to a switch, and then when you play the sound effects, require that switch be on, and if it's off, then it would just skip over it. Very easy to set that up, basically. That is the changes so far to the map, the additions that I've added to the game. I've kind of changed the database around. Let's close out of the game now. On the types, I had a tool here. I changed weapon to tool. Since I'm decided I think a battle system would be good, otherwise the game may feel kind of a waiting game at some points of the game, so there needs to be some sort of extra distraction. Putting a small battle system in the game would be very helpful. Changed tools, which was formerly weapon, into hands, so that the player can specify what they're holding in their hands. It just makes more sense to me. I'm debating adding some sort of monster capturing thing. I'm trying to keep the scope very, very small and narrow and be focused. It gets hard sometimes to stay focused, but I do need some other kinds of actors so that the player can have some backup in combat. And I'm thinking about limiting the number of skills. All of your party members are only going to have 4 or 5 skills, and that's it for their entire career. That might change. It's just an idea that I'm mulling over. I am also thinking if I do add more skills, I'll use Ganfly's equip skill plugin so that they can only have 4 usable skills at a time. The player will have to select which ones they want to use. That's sort of like how Pokemon does it. Anyway, it's just an idea I've been thinking about. But I haven't added any skills yet because I haven't added any new party members. I've added a few new items, added the ripe orange and a fresh apple. I haven't talked about the iron ingot yet, but I do plan on creating a forge or refinery where the player can use a combination of ore and coal and gold and coins. 3 things: ore, coal, and coins to produce iron ingots. The idea behind the crafting stations are I want most of the crafting stations to happen inside the town. All of the gathering and harvesting will happen outside of the town, or most of them anyway. Like I said, the apple trees or harvesting, but they're in town. Logging, mining in the quarry, fishing, doing the farms, all of that happens on the world map outside of the town. Refining those base materials into higher grade materials will happen in town at stations. For example, the sushi chef or the chef, they take raw fish and raw meat and turn it into food rations. The same thing will happen for ore and coal being turned into iron ingots. With these iron ingots, there'll be a pre-requirement to building newer, better buildings and other crafting stations. So right now you can build the mines and the farms and all the things without any expensive requirement besides some coins. But going forward, as the complexity rises, I plan to require wooden logs, iron ingots, maybe granite, different sets amount of stone, resources to build new crafting stations. Early on, it's just some gold. You pick what you want to start and the game keeps going until you build up how much coins you have and how much food rations you've stored up, maybe buy some extra pickaxes. I plan to make a building that will craft pickaxes using iron ingots and wooden logs. Right now, I have to make a refinery or a forge where we would basically smelt ore and coal into iron ingots. I need to set up the lumber mill so that we can harvest logs off of the world map. At the beginning, I'm not going to require like a hatchet or a pickaxe, but later on, I can see myself going back and adding a pre-requirement that you need axes to chop down trees or saws or another tool, just like I did with the quarry. At first, it didn't require any pickaxes because I needed to figure out the logic behind making sure that if the player has one pickaxe, all of your things that require a pickaxe can't run and process if you just buy one pickaxe and then they all give you one thing. I kind of want to jump over to that in the common events to address a problem that I recently found a solution to. I'll just show a couple of the items. The granite is going to be as expensive as a diamond because it still consumes a pickaxe just like the mine would. You have to roll a 20, 96, 97, 98, 99, or 100 out of 100 in order to get the granite. So it's like rolling a 20 on a d20. It's still as valuable as a diamond is. In the mines, you can get high chance to get ore, smaller chance to get coal, and a rare chance to get a diamond. So I made the quarries similar in that you have a high chance to get stone. Well, you're going to get one or the other. Slightly less chance to get salt, and then the rare chance to get granite. And then the last thing I added has been wooden log, which I haven't even made the lumber mill yet. So that's the thing we're going to probably be doing in this episode. Haven't put any weapons or tools in yet. No armors, no enemies, no troops, no additional states. I haven't added any new animations, which most of the time from this point on out will probably be very fast forward or excluded because you guys have seen the process how I go about making them. I don't want to cover the same ground too often. Tile sets are still the same. Now the meat of the game happens in the common events. Let's take a look at it. Most of the common events have been touched up or changed in a very slight manner. The global controller is basically going to keep things running if we meet all the requirements for them to run and they're not paused manually in the instance that they have stopped because we have ran out of a prereq for them to be running. Like we run out of pickaxes or gold. Some of them have multiple conditions. For example, for the kitchen buildings, the switch for the chefs being hired has to be on. The party has to have the raw items and the party also has to have 10 gold in order to pay the chef. Then it will turn it back on. Mine timer has been changed the most probably because I had some sort of jump to label event going on which worked, but I thought it was unnecessary actually. I'm freeing up a switch by removing the redone jump to label. I messed around with the quarry timer and having it require a pickaxe. I had to come up with some new logic for what if, here's a scenario, we have one pickaxe and we have a quarry and a mine and they both require a pickaxe to be running. If I buy one pickaxe, they will both start. The timer will get to the point 20-30 seconds. I think I've set them both to 30 seconds now. They get to the point where they've reached their timer and then it rolls a random number. Whether it consumes the pickaxe or not, I'm going to be getting 2 items. That was a problem because what if the first roll consumed the pickaxe and the second one would try to consume it, but we don't have it, so it still wouldn't consume it. We'd be getting a free item basically. We could buy one pickaxe, let all of our mines and quarries run off that one pickaxe, get a bunch of items, and then buy another one. And it was sort of like a way that the player could game the system and exploit a bug, which I didn't want. In order to circumvent that bug, I had to run a if the party has a pickaxe conditional branch twice. I don't have to run it at the beginning. I could just run it after the timer. But in order to optimize the game, I have it checking twice because I don't want the timers to be rolling if the player doesn't have the pre-required items to even start it in the first place. Also, it'll help with maintaining current position in the variable timer count. As it sits now, let's look at the event. At the beginning, the entire event is encapsulated with if the party has a pickaxe. This is an optimization conditional branch saying that I don't want this parallel process running at all if we don't have the required items for it. We have less parallel processes running at the same time. The game will probably be running smoother here, it's just an optimization thing. If the party does have the pickaxe, start the timer. The timer is going to go for, in this case, 30 seconds. We discovered in the past episodes 60 frames a second, and you add 1 to the variable every frame. 1 second will be 60 frames, 10 seconds is 600, 30 seconds is 1800. That's how we got this number. But once the timer's up, a quarry could have been running right before we started the mine. It could have checked to see if we have the pickaxe, which would have started it. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, and I do appreciate the feedback I get with all of these ideas. Like I've said at the beginning, it's a natural process of game design to rewrite the way that you're coding things and designing and inventing things several times. I plan to rewrite this again, most likely. But right now, checking twice, this may be redundant, but what it has done is made it so that I can't harvest 2 goods off of 1 pickaxe in the event that it loses the items on the first one. After the timer hits 1800, we check for the pickaxe again. If the party still has the pickaxe that the timer has finished, we can control a variable and roll it between 1 to 100 to see if we want to lose that item or not, if we want the item to be consumed in this endeavor. If the player rolls under 50, then we're going to lose a pickaxe. Otherwise, if the player is on the world map, play an animation. Now it says town plaque. Play the animation station produced on town plaque. This is a mine timer, which is supposed to play an animation on a world event, but when you call animations from a common event, it will take whatever map you're on. This is something you need to pay attention to. But if I go to world, we can look at that same event. You see where the show animation data has changed. It doesn't say town plaque now, it says mine 01 because it's looking at the map we're on. That's why we encapsulate the show animation when using it in a common event with a tracker with player map ID, which is a tracker variable that runs from the beginning of the game, jumping over real quick, to check game data, the map ID of the player. If we're on the right map, play the animation. If we're not on the right map, it'll skip over the animation. Then we're going to control another variable to check how many pickaxes we have and then store that number into a variable. We'll do a rarity check to see what item we get. If we roll 70 or below, then we're going to get an ore. It'll let us know that we have whatever number of pickaxes remaining and we got ore. And if we're on the right map, then we'll show the icon balloon. Otherwise, it'll skip over the icon balloon because it works the same way. It uses the event number, and if you're on a different map, it'll still show an icon balloon on a different event on a different map. We only show the icon balloon if the player is on the world map. Otherwise, if we roll below 96, then we'll get a coal. It'll do the same thing, but it's a different balloon and it shows a different item in the gab window. And then of course, if we roll 96 or higher, it will get a diamond. And this code works really well by checking less than, greater than, because at any point, if we roll somehow and a variable gets really messed up and we roll the variable has a negative number value, it'll still give you ore. And if it has some crazy value above 100, it'll still give a diamond. Oh, this code works as like a fail-safe, I guess, a safety switch. So no matter what the variable is, it's going to just give one of these and not crash the game. And then after it's decided what we got, we will set up the sound effect to play and then force the gab so that all the gab stuff happens right then and there. Set the timer back to 0. The L switch is saying if we don't have a pickaxe, once the timer finishes, turn the timer off and don't do all that stuff. If we don't have a pickaxe from the beginning, turn the timer off. Don't consume any processing power running this parallel process. The starting town timer works in a similar fashion, but it's a little bit more simplified. Discussed in the previous episode that I'm requiring food ration now, so the party has to have a food ration. Done the same concept, showing icon balloons and animations only if the player is on the right map using the player tracker. That's a very good concept to understand. Meat bar, I had a bug with meat bar that I've discovered over the weekend. I had show animation and sound effect inside the parallel process if the meat bar is between 3600 and 0. That was causing it to try to play at every frame of the game, so it was like, you know, and it bugged out. What I did here was made a condition at the bottom that checks to see if we are on a particular frame. If the meat bar is at 3599, this one frame, it will play a sound effect and show gab text saying, don't forget to feed your character or you're gonna starve, but it will only do this on that one frame, and this works, and I tested it this time. That's how I got around the playing it 3600 times. I had a bug, not in this one, because to call this common event, you have to use an item. This one worked fine, but in the consume food hotkey, I didn't actually have a change item, so player was able to eat food without actually using an item. I updated that. Quarry timer has been changed the most. It's set up to be very similar to the mine timer. I don't need to go through the entire thing because it's the same as the mine timer now, but different items, different gab texts, etc. It's all the same logic. Fish timer is the same, haven't messed with it. Player tracker keeps the game running smooth. The common event menu, I plan to update this so that at any point the player can press a button and see all of the things available in town to also show whether they currently have them purchased or not. This is going to be a common common event menu that give the player a lot of information at a glance. They don't have to run around the town if they don't want to. They can look at what they have, but I also want to remove any functionality from it. So if the player wants to hire or fire a sushi chef, he has to go into town and do it. If the player wants to purchase a building, they have to go into the town and purchase the building there, just to add some sort of substance to the game. Otherwise, it'll just be like a big menu-based game. There's going to be a common event menu to show everything that the player can do, but to actually do those things, the player will have to find where they are. In the common event menu, there will be pictures so the player can see what it looks like and go look around the town to find what it looks like to do those things. Kitchen chef, you have to have a little bit of gold in order for this to work. Pretty simple event. It does the same logic here, but it checks to see if the player is on the village building system or on the village map before it plays an animation and the icon balloon, etc. And then the apple timer and the citrus timer are very basic timer systems, which should have these simple ones. Looking at that, it adds a variable. You purchase the tree. Then if the variable gets over the right amount of time, which is currently set to 18 seconds, but it's going to be 3 minutes. I'll update that. Every 3 minutes, we'll get an apple. And the citrus timer is a copy paste of apple timer, but with different variables, items, tab windows. So what I need to do in this episode is create a lumber mill here. And also I'm considering giving the player an option to have 2 lumber mills. So we'll start with the one here, and maybe we'll come up with an idea to do with this encampment here and this watchtower here, what we can do with these 2 events. But we need a way to gather wooden logs. I've created the resource wooden log, harvested at the lumber mill. Let's set up an event here. I'm actually going to copy the mine real quick and start this at the beginning. Use our event mini label. It's going to require axes, but right now I don't have the item created and I'm not going to require anything for it to operate. And it's going to provide probably multiple types of wood. I'm thinking like pine, oak, ash. Leave your comments below, leave your suggestions below. If you know one type of wood is worth a lot more than another type and one type of wood is a lot stronger than another type, let me know like maybe 2 or 3 types and then give me like their rarity. I could also look that up later if I don't get any feedback on that. Right now, I'm just going to have it provide the player with certain amount of wooden log. It will tally the player's gold, the top. Purchase a lumber mill. We'll have it cost 1,000 right now. Let the player know that it produces wooden logs every 45 seconds. And I'll have it 4.5 seconds in the timer to debug it. We'll show the player's gold, but we can get rid of this you currently have because I forgot to mention I added Fly's map gold window, which until we add more to the GUI, I'll just use map gold window. I do plan to customize the GUI. Also need to update the text on this because I changed the timer on the mines from 20 to 30 seconds. Need to double check that item 16 is wooden logs. And it is not. Wooden logs are 17, so let's update that. Okay, we've set up our event for the lumber mill. Let's set up the common event for it. We're not going to require an axe or a saw yet, so I'm not going to do the conditional branch. I'm just going to control a variable and add one to the variable. We'll also set up a manual pause mode once we have it require items. Let's find the icon for wooden log listed right here, 295. We need to find the event number for this, so let's do that. We can see the event number up here. So this is ID number 10 on the world map. So in the common event, we are checking to see that if we are on the world map using player map ID, and now we can see if the player is on the world map. If they are, then we want to play an icon balloon on event number 10 for the wooden log. Also, an animation that we don't wait for in a parallel, only if we are on the right map. Either way, we want to play a sound effect and a text through the gab window, so let's do that. Now, I need to create a sound effect for when I harvest a tree. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but we need something. I don't want it to be the apple bite. I've made a couple sound effects over the weekend where I bite into an apple and other things too. Find something. Okay, I have with me a comb, hard plastic comb, and a cardboard cup holder. Now what I'm going to do is make a thwacking sound with the two objects. I'm gonna load Audacity and record some thwacking sounds. That ought to do. I'll pick the chunkiest looking one. So it's either the second to last one or at the beginning. I kind of like this third one the best. So I'm gonna take this third one, cut it, delete all this other stuff, paste this, and I'm gonna clean this audio up a little bit by normalizing. And then I'm gonna apply a limiter. This does degrade some of the quality when you limit it down, but it also makes it more audible. That's going to work for now. I'm gonna apply a limiter and then some compression. There we go. So we have a custom sound effect. We'll export this audio. It's going to be wood chop. I'll take wood chop, copy it, put it inside the game's audio sound effects. I'll press F2 in home and press !DG_ just to preface the text with a naming convention so that it lumps all of the custom ones I've made together. They're easier to find that way. I can also press F2 and then press Control C and it'll copy the name. So when I go inside my gab sound plugin command, I can just press Control V and paste it verbatim. Now when I harvest wood, it will play the wood chop sound effect we created. And it'll let us know that we have harvested item index of 17 wooden log. We'll reset the timer for the lumber mill, set it to 0. And that's it for now. That's a very simple setup. 270 is not 45 seconds, it's 4.5 seconds. But I plan to add a 0 if this functions as is intended to. So let's test our lumber mill now. Lumber mill, we get wooden log. Purchase a lumber mill at this location. It costs 1,000, produce a wooden log every 45 seconds. You currently have 10,000. Purchase the lumber mill for that. We do so, and we should be getting notifications every 4.5 seconds. Wooden log has been harvested would be better. So let's change the text on that. I'll also update the other one. A ripe orange has been harvested. Sounds better. Fresh apple has been harvested. Now, for the kitchen, they produce 5 food rations. Saying 5 food rations have been produced, I don't know, it kind of sounds better to me than has been produced. If it's singular, you would use has. If it's plural, you'd use have. Wooden log has been harvested. Sounds better than have been harvested. So anyway, we'll go with that. Also need to test to see if the icons and the animation, the balloon icons, and the animation play if we go into the village on like event 10. Because there's 17 events. It would at some point if I didn't set that up right. I need to make sure that it works right here. Yep, animation, gab window, and the show balloon works there. If we go into town, it should still show the gab. Timer should still be running. We should still be getting items, but it should also not be putting that animation on things. I think it's working fine. I'll just walk by all the events as it's being harvested to double check. Yeah. Let's get this going. Let's get this going. I would like to make this require a certain amount of stone to install this, a certain amount of wooden logs to install this. I think we're going to do that instead of just coins. Actually, it doesn't cost anything to set up the kitchen and the sushi kitchen. Well, I'm going to make that a thing now. So the lumber mill is set up and that's working fine for now until we create the axes or saws needed. Then we make a pause timer for it. So we'll do that later. Right now, I want to make it so that in order to set up the sushi bar and the kitchen, we have to spend some logs and stone to make that happen. So let's do that. These are mostly blank events right here. These are just blank events just so that it creates a block for the player. And I could just use Janfly's region restrictions, and that's probably a better way to go about this. The main reason I'm using this is so that the player can walk here without running into invisible blocks until the switch is on. If there's nothing here, the player could walk back and forth. And if we go to regions, you can see I did paint the regions with region 93, which is disallowing the events from, it's restricting events from walking on that so that Devin doesn't get stuck behind the counter or any other NPCs I create up here. The event is in the spots below the character in front of the signs. These could be simplified, which I probably need to simplify them. I'm going to show some text that'll let the player know the transaction that needs to happen. In order to set a kitchen here, you require 20 logs. Pay one time payment of 20 logs and 1,000 points. Additionally, you will have to pay the chef 10 points every minute. Would you like to install a kitchen here? Now the player has a basic idea of what he would need, he or she would need, in order to set this up. And I'm just going to remove, well, I could leave it here, but I should also put in the requirements first. Yeah. Minus 20. 20 logs minus 1,000 points. Yeah, this time. Nothing. Player's not going to need to fire the chef at any point, but maybe the player wants to save raw foods and not turn them into food rations. So I'm going to actually leave that functionality of firing the chef. Because maybe the player has max number of food rations. They want to save their raw meat and their raw fish for something else. So there may be a point in time where they've made an investment to hire a chef or a sushi chef for food rations, and they know they'll have to come up with 20 logs and 1,000 coins to set them up again, but they want to store and start saving up the number of raw food they have, so they're going to fire the chef for the time. I can see an instance where that would be helpful functionality, so I'm not just going to remove it since I already made it anyway. Since we have added extra requirements, we need to actually check to see if the player has those requirements. If they say yes, they would like to hire a chef, we need to add extra requirements. If they already have the chef, we don't need to. Otherwise, we need to do some conditional branches. We need to see if the player has greater than or equal to 1,000 gold. Otherwise, tell them they don't have enough gold, which I'm going to just take some you don't have enough window over here, put it in here to save me a little bit of time. And we need to put all of these things inside the if they have the 1,000 gold. But we also need to check to see if they have 20 logs. Control a variable and set it to the game data of the number of wooden logs the player has. And then we'll make a conditional branch inside here saying if that variable is greater than or equal to 20, we'll have an else handler. Then it can do all of this stuff. But otherwise, it'll say you don't have enough. Instead of gold, we'll put wooden log. And we can let them know that they currently have this many actual holders with 325. They currently have their own 25 now of these wooden logs. Before we copy paste this event to the sushi chef, we need to test it. So let's start on the map, go to here. In order to set up a kitchen here, you require a one-time payment of 20 wooden logs. You actually need to add an S to that text, 10,000 coins. Additionally, you'll have to pay the chef 10 coins every minute. Would you like to install? We can hire the chef, and it'll let us know what we need and what it's going to grant us. Or we can fire the chef or do nothing and say hire. We don't have enough wooden logs. We currently have 0. Let's go buy wooden logs. If I added them to the traveling merchant, I don't know if I've done that yet. Why? We don't have that. Let's add some stuff to the traveling merchant. Iron ingots, ripe orange, fresh apples, and wooden logs. Okay, so it works, but we forgot to take away the logs and the gold. Let's do that. If they have 1,000 gold, then we need to change gold and decrease 1,000. And if they have wooden log count, we need to change items and decrease the wooden log count. And otherwise, I think it works perfectly. Awesome. As far as the common event goes, it's still going to run the same common event. That doesn't need to change at all because the only thing that we've changed is the initialization cost, the one-time payment of you got to pay to set up the event. All we have to do is change the event for the sushi chef timer, and let's do that one as well. So this makes much more sense now. In fact, I'm going to move this event over here, copy this event, paste it, and replace this one with this one. And instead of logs, I want the sushi bar to require stone, just to add variance. I forgot what number that is. Let's double check. We actually don't need a variable for every count. Every time we count, we can just say item count. I don't know why I feel compelled to use a custom variable every time I want to count something. Probably a bad practice. You shouldn't do that. Just use one variable to count. I guess if things are happening on the same frame, there could be a problem. I don't know. I have plenty of variables. I think we're set up right. It should function correctly now. Let's try this and test it out. Now it works. Did it take the stone? Yep, it used up the stone, takes up the logs for that, and it consumed the logs and it consumed the money. Now they are working, and if I had raw fish and raw meat, they would be converting those into food rations. Let's buy fish and meat. Their timers will be started now. ID. Yeah, the farm. Food keep income. At this point, the player can go to rename their town, mess around a little bit, talk to NPCs in town, go into the dungeon and walk around the dungeon and maybe start up the battle system. Guys, that's gonna do it for this episode. We've made a lot of progress over the weekend and today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this series. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. Like this video if you do like this series. I really appreciate all the likes and the interactivity you guys show on these videos. It really does mean a lot to me. If you would like to support what I do, please consider backing me on patreon.com/driftwoodgaming. That would be awesome of you to do that. And if you want to come hang out and talk with us, we have a Discord channel. Just check the link in the description below. Come hang out and talk with us. We'd love to have you in the Discord. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to stay awesome. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.